Welcome. We are continuing our review for Unit 2. So we're looking at the interactions among branches of government. And today we're focusing on topic 2.8. 2.8, which is the judicial branch. So we're looking at the judicial branch, right? We're getting into uh, the Supreme Court, right? And the required course content, the enduring understandings, these are really important, right? This is basically the design of the judicial branch protects the Supreme Court's independence. So we're looking at really the Supreme Court's independence. Oh, there we go. As a branch of government and the emergence and use of judicial review. Right? Two key concepts of the Supreme Court. Right? So the Supreme Court's independence as a branch of government and the emergence of the judicial review remains a powerful judicial practice. Right? The learning objective, this is what students will be able to do, right? So students will explain the principle of judicial review and how it checks the power of other institutions, right? Particularly the legislative and executive branches and state governments, right? The fact that judicial review empowers the Supreme Court to overturn state laws, right? We have three uh, key required documents here: the Constitution, Federalist number 78, and Marbury versus Madison. So the essential knowledge is what students will know. This is what your must knows, right? The foundation for powers of the judicial branch and how its independence checks the power of other institutions and state government are set forth in Article 3, right? Article 3 of the Constitution, which says basically that all judicial powers in the United States will be vested in the Supreme Court, right? So this is really laying out the foundation for powers of the judicial branch, that all judicial powers will be vested in a Supreme Court. Also talks about the method for the appointment of judges. Supreme Court judges will be appointed by the president with confirmation by the Senate. Right? So if we're talking about independence, right? Independence kind of comes from political independence, that the branches are independent from, that the judicial branch is independent from the other branches and also independent from political pressures. The fact that they're going to be appointed by the president and not elected by the people, right, kind of removes that political pressure from the Supreme Court. They're not really responsible to the people. They're really just responsible for interpreting Federal Number 78 for interpreting the Constitution, right? Um, so in Federal Number 78, Madison, or no, I'm sorry, Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton, basically says that, first of all, the judicial branch is going to be the weakest branch of government because it has neither power of the sword nor the purse. It has neither power to declare war, make laws, right, or to tax or to fund government. It's merely there to interpret the laws, right? So even though it's the weakest branch of government, it's going to be responsible for holding the other two branches accountable, right? Marbury versus Madison, judicial review. So the main purpose of the Supreme Court is to interpret and review the law, right? Laws passed by Congress and actions of the president. So they need to be independent. They need to be independent from these political pressures. That's why the best way to create their independence, according to Alexander Hamilton and the framers, was to have them appointed for life. They serve life terms. There are no term limits, and there are no limitations on how long they serve. So therefore, once given their seat, they're able to freely, independently interpret the Constitution, right? And they're also appointed by the president. So even though they are removed from these political pressures, there are politics involved, right? The president often looks for judges that are like-minded as the president. And we know that all federal judges, Supreme Court judges included, have to be confirmed by a majority vote of the Senate, right? So depending on the makeup of the president and the Senate, that can create some conflict. Politics can become involved in that process, right? And then Marbury versus Madison, the required Supreme Court case that basically highlights this concept of judicial review, right? That in this case, the Judiciary Act of 1789, parts of it are found to be unconstitutional, and the law is struck down by the Supreme Court, establishing this concept of judicial review.